Have you ever stopped to think about the safety net that catches you when your digital banking life, well, just stops working? I mean, we trust these apps with literally everything, but what happens when they fail? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain and decode the invisible rulebook that keeps your money safe when things go really, really wrong.
Okay, just picture this for a second. It's payday, you're all set to pay rent, knock out some bills, maybe treat yourself a little. You pull out your phone, tap the banking app, and nothing. You try the website, it's just gone. You feel that? That little knot of panic tightening in your stomach? Well, that is the exact chaos that financial regulators are working around the clock to prevent.
So what could actually cause such a massive meltdown?
You might be thinking it's always some super hacker in a dark room, right? But the reality is, it's so much broader than that.
I mean, the threats are really lurking everywhere. We're talking about something as simple and horrifying as an accidental server wipe, or as sinister as deliberate sabotage from the inside. It could be a critical piece of hardware just giving up, a massive natural disaster like a flood or an earthquake, and yeah, of course, the big one, a sophisticated cyber attack. Any one of these could bring a bank's most important services to a dead stop.
So, how in a world do banks prepare for the absolute worst-case scenario? Well, they don't just cross their fingers and hope for the best. Nope. They have a very detailed, mandatory playbook they have to follow.
Now, it's a bit of a mouthful, I know, but these regulations are the master plan, and you should think of it less like boring old bureaucratic red tape and more like a carefully crafted emergency response strategy. It's designed to protect not just the banks, but more importantly, your access to your own money.
The name of the game here is something called operational resilience. In simple terms, it's really all about how well a bank can take a punch, whether that punch comes from a hacker or a hurricane, and get right back on its feet, making sure services are up and running as fast as humanly possible.
Okay, so how do we make sure this whole bouncing back thing isn't just some vague corporate promise? Well, the regulations get super specific, and they boil it all down to two absolutely critical metrics.
First up, you've got RTO, or Recovery Time Objective. This is the stopwatch. The second a system goes down, an invisible timer starts. The RTO is the absolute maximum amount of time the bank has to get it back online. For the really critical stuff, like processing your payments, we could be talking a matter of just minutes. Next is RPO, or Recovery Point Objective. You can think of this one as the rewind button. It decides the maximum amount of your recent data that can be lost for good. So if a bank has an RPO of, say, 1 minute, it means they have to be backing up everything so often that in a total disaster, they'd only lose the last 60 seconds of information. So let's put it all together. RTO is all about speed. How fast can we fix this? And RPO is all about data. How much of the latest info are we okay with losing? Banks have to define these targets, test them, and prove they can hit them for every single one of their core services.
And here's the thing, this is not a set it and forget it kind of plan. You don't just write it up, file it away, and hope you never need it. The regulations lock banks into a continuous, never-ending cycle of getting ready, testing, and getting better.
This cycle has 4 key stages that they have to go through every single year: analyze and plan, build and prepare, train and drill, and finally, review and improve. So let's take a quick look at how it all works.
All right, everything kicks off with a deep, and I mean deep, honest look at what could go wrong, and, more importantly, what services matter the most to you, the customer.
This annual check-in is so important. First, banks have to pinpoint their most critical operations. We're talking about things like taking deposits, processing payments, and making loans. Then, they do what's called a business impact analysis. Basically, they have to ask themselves, if this service goes down, how bad is the damage? That analysis is what lets them set those RTO and RPO targets we just talked about and create a strict priority list for what gets fixed first. So, you've got the plan. But a plan is just a piece of paper without the actual real-world infrastructure to back it up, right? So this next step is all about building the defenses. This is where the plan becomes a reality. Banks are required by law to have powerful backup systems, totally separate physical recovery sites, so a fire in one building doesn't wipe out everything, and even backup internet connections. They also have to keep their most critical data stored in a secure, remote third location, just in case the first 2 are somehow taken out. You can have the best plan and the fanciest equipment in the world,
But it's all pretty much useless if the people involved have no idea what to do when the alarms start blaring.
And that's exactly why every single year, banks have to run full-blown recovery drills. They simulate all sorts of disaster scenarios, from a devastating cyber attack to a citywide blackout, just to make sure the team can actually follow the plan under extreme pressure. And here's a key detail. They have to pull their main technology suppliers into these drills too, because a bank's resilience is only as strong as its weakest partner.
And finally, the cycle closes the loop. This last step is all about looking back at those drills, finding every single weakness, and making the plan even more bulletproof for next time. So after every drill, there's a serious review meeting. They ask the tough questions. Did we actually meet our recovery time objective? Was our data loss inside the limits of our recovery point objective? The answers to those questions go directly into updating and strengthening their whole business continuity plan. It's this constant feedback loop that keeps the system getting sharper and stronger every year.
So, after all that technical stuff, why does any of this really matter to you? What's the big takeaway from all these rules and cycles?
Well, because this entire system, this nonstop cycle of planning, building, and testing, it isn't really for the banks. It's for us. It's the safety net that makes sure the system we count on for our paychecks, our savings, and just our daily lives is as stable and as trustworthy as it can possibly be.
You know, ultimately, it all boils down to this one simple but really powerful idea. Resilience in our financial world isn't some project you can finish. It's a perpetual state of vigilance, a constant promise to be ready for just about anything. And that kind of leaves us with one last big thought. These rules are strong for the threats we know about today, but the next big threat, it's always just around the corner. So the question we have to keep asking is this: are we preparing fast enough for the challenges we can't even see yet?